गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनशृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्रयवतो गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम।
Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my humble pranams at the lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. And as we collectively offer our greetings to our Mother Sai, O Mother, bless us with a beautiful session ahead. Shower on us the plethora of love you hold. Refresh our delicate monkey minds and fill in our hearts the paragon of bliss. Requesting all the participants of today's session to surrender themselves to Swami and manifest in their hearts the paragon of bliss. A loving Sairam to all the participants of today's session and a hearty welcome to yet another session of Dhyana Vahini. Forging ahead with today's schedule, I would like to introduce Brother Hari, who shall be helping us in summarizing the third and fourth chapters of the Dhyana Vahini Parayana. Brother Shihari hails from Madikeri, Kodagu, Karnataka. He is currently working as Senior Manager, Accounts and Purchases with the Medical Care Division of Sri Satya Sai Central Trust, Prashanthi Nilayam. He completed his BTech in Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering from IIT Chennai, and he holds an MBA from Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. His expertise includes consolidation of financial statements of the hospitals of Sri Satya Sai Central Trust and statutory reports to the Finance Ministry and Home Ministry GOI. He works along with the finance controllers of the hospitals on the capital budget and revenue budgets presented annually to the trust. He is a member of the purchase committees of the hospitals. He co-hosted a program named Shravanam Mananam Nidhi Dhyasanam live on Thursdays on Radio Sai. He regularly delivers talks at the Satsang Hall in the ashram. He published papers based on application of genetic algorithms to production management and also on portfolio selection. A very happy learning to all the sisters in today's session. Brother Hari, over to you. Jai Sai Ram.
Sai Ram, Sai Ram. I just want to say a few words.
Yes.
I want to say a few words, Hari, before you go on.
Yes, Guru.
Yeah. Sai Ram to everybody. A very lovely Sunday morning. Very happy to see you all again on this Sunday. We have about 132 participants. I think we still have 30 more to join. Anita, if I'm right. So just to tell you something about Hari. Hari is a lovely person by heart. We've heard about his credentials of financial capabilities and everything, but I've known him for more than 3 decades, and we've worked together on many initiatives in Gram Sevas. I would partially disagree to say he's from Karnataka. He's basically also from Hyderabad. So that's a part of it that I want to mention. And more important, Anita, when you said fresh minds with monkey minds, we're all monkey minds. Let's not give that fresh outlook only to those who are participating. We are all still in the monkey mind business right now. And I'm sure that Hari will open certain new vistas into the thought process of this Dhyana Vahini or the third and fourth chapter. Over to you, Hari. Have a great session.
Thank you, Gopi Bhai and Sister Anita also for that introduction. So as Gopi Bhai did say, as very much part of the Hyderabad youth, and that was my really my first introduction to Bhagawan, and the completely the access to Swami, the access to being Swami's student, all of that started with my participation in the Hyderabad youth. Really my first close darshan of the Lord, my first chance to speak to him was thanks to being part of the youth group and the seva activities that they would conduct. That won Swami's heart so much. Like, he would literally shower his grace, very, very in an uninhibited manner on us. So those are days I can never forget. And of course, the leadership that was provided by people like Gobai, it is very unique. You'll not find such leadership. So literally being with these people is the leadership course. You'll actually learn more by just listening to them, their experiences, and being around them, more than actually listening to the theory part. Anyhow, so as faculty, we've all been given our respective roles, and so I have been asked to summarize the chapters 3 and 4 of the Dhyana Vahini. And let me first share the presentation to begin. Yeah. I hope the presentation is visible to everyone. Sister
Yes,
Anita,
yes.
can you confirm?
Yeah, wide and
Yes,
clear.
brother.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
And what a beautiful photograph here on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to offer my humble pranams at Bhagawan's lotus feet and for giving me this opportunity to serve his students of the leadership course. I'll endeavor in the next 1 hour or so to serve you in the best way possible with this summary of the chapters 3 and 4. So the beginning chapter is the goal of meditation. Like, in fact, when I look at this photo of Bhagawan, I remember my very first darshan of Bhagawan as a student. It was the beginning of the summer course in 2000. I had landed just that afternoon, from Chennai. I had come straight to Vrindavan to be to join as a student. And that very afternoon, we were told that we have to sit in the lawns of the Trai Vrindavan, that is Swami's residence in Bangalore, in Vrindavan. And I can never forget. See, this was the day when they start handing out all the notebooks for the summer course. And Swami called some of us students, right? So Swami was standing on the porch of the Trai Vrindavan, and the books were all stacked right at his feet. And Swami said, first MBA boys, we were the freshers. He called us just straight away. He said, come, all of you come and, start distributing. And the moment he said first MBA, I got up and I went straight to, and I was so close to Swami's feet, my hands were shivering. And we picked up the books, notebooks, we distributed it. And then Bhagawan went and sat right in the middle of the lawns, and we all sat around him and we did bhajans. And I just remember his blissful face, eyes closed in exactly this posture and his hands waving in the air. And believe me, like if ever, you want to meditate on some object, it is exactly this countenance of the Lord. There's nothing else that requires, you to build any concentration. Straight away, look at a photo like this, and you can immediately get into a deep meditation. So the goals of meditation, that is what Swami is speaking about. The whole Dhyana Vahini, it talks about different things like how do we conduct meditation? What all do we need? But here Swami is speaking about what the goals of meditation are. You should keep them in mind, right? So when I'm doing meditation, this is what is the end result. And I should get to this spot in the journey, right? So what Swami says is one of the most important goals is tempering the mind, right? The fluctuations of the mind, those need to be kept completely in check. What do we mean by fluctuation? So many of you know, right? Like things things happen. Like we are in a very good mood one moment, the very next moment, things zoom all the way down, right? Somebody says something, something happens, we get reminded of something, and our mind just gets triggered just like that. So we completely, keep oscillating. Once we are in a very good place in the mind, and then suddenly, we go down. So all these things happen, and that is what Swami says, that essentially we have to slowly train the mind, channel the mind in such a way that these fluctuations are in check. And Swami says that, in the Zen teaching, right? They compare that the mind must be like honey. So what does it mean to be like honey, right? So you can imagine, on the one hand, you have a cup of water, and the other hand, you have a cup of honey, right? So supposing you disturb a cup of water a little bit, what happens? You can all imagine, like, the ripples that will flow out, and even in that small cup, there'll be a lot of disturbance happening. And that's literally what happens with most of us, right? It takes a very long time for our minds to settle down once they are disturbed. So the goal of meditation in the Zen tradition is to make it like honey. What does it mean to be like honey? Like, you can imagine that honey is so viscous. You just disturb it a little, it may, form a little bit disturbance like this, but ultimately it will settle down, right? So that is what is our aim. This is what our mind should ultimately become like. And what is the secret to that? Because as Bhagawan says in this chapter, what he says is that ups and downs will always occur in life. There's absolutely no one's life who is so smooth that there's nothing untoward that happens. Something or the other, very, very small things it could be. You can imagine that you maybe sat down for meditation this morning, and you had a very peaceful, blissful time. Like, I remember, like, say we are in the Kulwant hall, we have listened to Bhagawan's discourse, and he has spoken about something very high, like Advaita. He says that you are one with everybody in the world and all that. And you come out of the hall, you are so much in that mood. Yes, I am, I'm seeing the Atma in everybody. You come out to the chappal stand and your chappal is missing. That's all it takes. That moment, all that oneness with everybody is gone. At least maybe everybody else is divine, but that one person who stole your slipper, that person is definitely not divine. So that's all it takes. That in a second, in a flash, that whole peaceful state of the mind has got disturbed. So what Bhagawan says is, this is inevitable. These ups and downs will happen. And he likens this journey of life to something like this. He says the waters of a river, they leap from mountains, fall into valleys, rush through gorges. Tributaries join at various stages, like our relationships. So people come into our life at various stages of our life. Sometimes they leave, and the waters become turbid and unclean. Right? So as time goes on, this is almost inevitable that this happens. Right? So small things could happen, like you woke up, your coffee wasn't the right temperature, and then supposing you got news that somebody else got a promotion and you didn't get it, or the grades that you were expecting in the college, your people around you got better grades and somehow you didn't, right? So anything can disturb that peace. Right? So it's like we are traveling in the river that we're going river rafting, and suddenly our raft has been tipped over. You are now in stormy waters, right? And what do we do at such a time? Like, what is our response, right? So what happens is, the first thought that really occurs to us is that, hey, this should not be happening. Why is this happening? Why me? So right away we pass a judgment. Till then, when things are going nicely, we don't ask ourselves, hey, why is this occurring to me? You feel like you totally deserve it and all that, right? But at that particular moment, the first thought is a judgment called, an opinion called, this should not be happening. This isn't it. And that's when the mind starts getting agitated, that why should this be happening to me and all that, right? And many people, they get very stressed out. So they start thinking about that particular event, and the mind starts getting even more agitated. All of you can identify with exactly what I'm talking about. And it is not just this, say, it's not just an opinion on one particular incident. We have opinions about ourselves, about the kind of people that we are, right? So some of us may have an opinion about ourselves that we are what, lazy people, or we have a lot of jealousy, or we have a lot of anger, right? So we have a lot of opinions and thoughts about ourselves. And the thought is that, hey, we should not be like this. This should not be happening to us. This is not the way we are supposed to be, right? And this is the reason, with all that stress, with all that anxiety, with all these negative thoughts, that is when we sit for meditation and we expect our mind to be completely still and undisturbed. No wonder it doesn't work, right? Because in the background, what is happening is we have so many such judgments, thoughts about ourselves that are going on. And primarily it is that this shouldn't be happening. This is not right. So then as we sit for meditation, what do? We notice that all these thoughts are rushing into our mind, one after another, like an avalanche, like a flood of thoughts, right? And then we think to ourselves, okay, so now how to counter these thoughts? What should we do? And Bhagawan says that at that very moment, we may be making a very big mistake. Because he says, as he has explained several times to students and many other places, that is in fact the nature of the mind. It is the nature of the mind to go through all these kind of ups and downs. And he says, if you try to control the mind, if you try to control those thoughts from happening by saying this should not be happening and all that, what you're doing is you are like straightening the tail of a dog. So you can hold on, like for a moment, a few seconds, you can make the tail straight. The moment you let go, what happens? The tail again curves back. And so this is the mistake with many of the kind of thoughts that we have, what we call as negative thoughts. We try to counter that, right? We try to fight those thoughts. And then Bhagavan says that is like actually that you're trying to straighten out the tail of a dog, right? Which is absolutely not the right thing to do, right? So in fact, there's a very beautiful story that which is told about Lord Buddha. It is said that Lord Buddha, he went with his disciples to a particular place, and it was a very hot afternoon. So he sits under a tree and he asks his disciple, he shows him that there's a small puddle of water ahead. He says, like, can you go and get a cup of water for me? And so the disciple, as he rushes to take collect that water, a bullock cart, it goes right through that. It goes right through that puddle, and you can imagine that the waters are all disturbed and all muddy, right? So that disciple becomes like very disturbed, because he's saying he has to get water for the Lord, and the water is all muddy. So he rushes back to the Lord Buddha and he says, the Lord Buddha, just now I was trying to collect the water, but it is all muddy. What should I do? The Lord says, just wait for a few minutes. And the disciple is very agitated. He says, no, but I saw there's a lake about a kilometer from here. I'll quickly rush, get the water for you and come back. The Lord patiently says, wait. Like our Swami, anything we ask for, so many desires we have, so many troubles. Swami just says, wait. So exactly like that, Lord Buddha was also telling his disciples, wait. That he somehow, held himself together, just sat like that, as tight as he could, the devotee. But he couldn't bear it. After some time, again, he got up. He said, Lord, I have to now go and, collect that water. So he goes to that puddle again, and he sees the mud has settled down a little bit, but the waters are still unclean. He goes to the Buddha. Buddha says, I told you to wait a little more. And this happens twice or thrice. The devotee goes to the puddle, sees it is muddy, comes back, and Buddha says, see, I'm telling you, wait. Finally, after an hour or so, the Buddha says, okay, now go and bring the water. Now is the right time. So that disciple goes, he sees now that the waters are crystal clear. The mud has settled down, and he happily collects that cup of water and gives it to the Lord. So the Lord Buddha says, just a few days ago, weren't you asking me how to deal with the mind? That you've got so many such thoughts that are rushing through your mind. You're not able to find peace of mind. And you are asking me what should be done. And he says, I was pointing out to you the very mistake that you all do. When the mind is ruffled, you go and fight with those thoughts. You hope that those thoughts will somehow calm down on their own, etc. The Lord Buddha says that do not fight those thoughts. Just let the thoughts be. They will come and they will go, like passing clouds, as Swami says. So this was a beautiful story that from Lord Buddha's life that tells us, how we should conduct our meditation. We may have different paths, we may have different forms of meditation that we pick up, some that work for you, some that don't work for you. But if you see the substratum of them all, what is common to all of them is essentially the practice of watching your thoughts, right? So that the idea is not to fight those thoughts. I remember when there was a senior of mine when I was doing my MBA. So I was in my first year and he was a senior in my second year. So this was towards the maybe February, March. So his time as a student with Bhagawan was getting over and there were so many thoughts that were disturbing him. So one can imagine after so many years spent at the Lord's feet, the idea of leaving Puttaparthi and then it's a completely new life. You're beginning to step into work life, you'll go to a strange city. So many thoughts were going through his mind. He was very, very disturbed. He said he could not sleep. And so he wrote all of this down in a long letter, many, many pages. And during darshan, I remember that evening, he goes up to Swami and he gives that letter. So Swami doesn't even read that letter. He just takes that letter, looks at him, he points to his head and he says, your mind, it is completely disturbed, no peace at all. And as usual, Swami knows everything without you having to tell him. And the student said, yes, Swami, please tell me the secret to control my mind. And this is what Swami did, he didn't give an answer. Now imagine you hear a question like, Swami, how to control the mind? No, everybody is like, yes, the secret is going to come out, right? All Swami did was he took that letter, didn't utter a word, just kept looking at it and tore it into small bits, like very, very calmly. I remember he took about 3 or 4 minutes, not a word, all eyes on him. And he slowly tearing it, let the pieces fall at his feet. And once the letter is completely torn to bits, shredded to bits, then he tells the student, you pick up all these pieces, go into the Chitravati and throw them there. That's all Swami said. At that stage, we are looking for very slapstick answers, straight answers. We want quick answers to all the solutions, right? But it is something that, believe me, it took maybe a decade or two before I got the importance of the significance of what Swami was trying to teach us at that moment. Because that is the goal of meditation, and this is how you deal with thoughts, that with such thoughts that you don't give them that kind of significance, the kind of significance that we give to all the thoughts that we have. Somebody else, to borrow an analogy from what somebody told me. So many of you, I'm pretty sure you have come to Prashanti Nilayam before. So you imagine Kulwant Hall, the darshan, bhajans are all done, and you're coming out, you come out of the hall towards that East Prashanti block, right? So you can imagine that in that street, there are so many people who are passing and you are trying to make your way towards the Ganesh gate. All the other people are coming down, right? Now, what will you do when you see such a crowd? Like, the thing is, you pick your way between the crowds, isn't it? You don't go jostling against everybody, hitting their shoulders. You make your way between them. And a great master said that this is exactly how we should deal with our thoughts. The idea is to find your way between the thoughts, not to go latch onto one of them and then, make your way following those thoughts. So this is a very right at the beginning, like most of the chapters on meditation in Dhyana Vahini that I see, Swami builds it up slowly. But in this particular chapter, I'm seeing it's literally like getting into, I mean, you're opening overs itself, you're smashing sixes. This is literally what Swami has done in this particular chapter. Then Bhagawan goes on to speak about the importance of ekagrata. So he speaks about concentration and ekagrata, both are there, one pointedness. So concentration and ekagrata, how does Swami distinguish? Swami says that essentially both are the same thing in the sense that our attention is completely absorbed into the task that we are doing. Like in psychology, some people, positive psychology, they call this phenomenon flow. That point in time where you are not even aware of your own self. You and your task have become one. It could be a task at hand, or it could be some hobby that you're into, you're painting something, you're lost in it. Or you're playing a very good game of tennis, or as they call it, right? So that, however, that concentration has happened all of itself. There's so many things came together and your mind got concentrated. Ekagrata is a very conscious effort on your on your part to bring your attention completely on to the task at hand. So this Swami says is very, very important. And in fact, in the life of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, we see that it is this one-pointedness that took him to the goal each time. Because there are many people who ask what kind of spiritual path we should follow. There is Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, this path, that path. Right? So once a master was asked, like, what is it that will take us to the goal? The only answer is this earnestness, this one-pointedness is what takes us. It doesn't matter, in fact, what path you take. What matters is the earnestness. And that is what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he demonstrates in his life. For example, he himself narrates that how he took up Dasya Bhava. Dasya Bhava means what? That you imagine that you are a servant of the Lord. So he modeled himself after Hanuman. He said, I will be like Hanuman, that all my thoughts, all my actions are all towards only one goal, that of serving my Lord Rama. So he says that he got so much into that role of being like Hanuman that at one point of time, he even started growing a tail. And similarly, he says that there was this Advaitin, a very well-known Advaitin of that time called Totapuri. So he had come to Ramakrishna's ashram to teach him about Advaita. And Totapuri was so amazed that the way he immersed himself, the Paramahamsa completely immersed himself in Advaita, that thought. He says what people took decades or centuries even of, or many lives of dedicated study of Advaita, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa achieved the goal in 3 weeks so quickly. He says he just stands in the water and he just presses Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's forehead and immediately he goes into Samadhi. Likewise, the Paramahamsa follows even Islam, he follows the Christian traditions. All of this, he says that whatever path he took, he managed to reach the goal. And why was he able to do it? Through the practice of one-pointedness. So meditation promotes this one-pointedness. Even if you're not, looking to attain salvation, enlightenment, or anything so lofty, anything that you want to do in your life, you absolutely need this one-pointedness. You yourself can see, even if I notice sometimes, making plans with people around me. So we'll say, yes, so 11 o'clock, we have to go for breakfast or brunch to so-and-so place, right? And I just noticed, like from 10:30 onwards, what are our activities? None of them are aligned to start from the place to reach in time at 11, right? We are doing pretty much everything else. Our conversations start going off on tangents, and suddenly we'll start talking about other things or doing something else. But none of it is aligned to what we just said a few minutes ago, that we have to go for brunch at 11 to so-and-so place. It's a very hilarious phenomenon to watch, almost true of all of us. But that is because we have not learned to really train our mind to follow exactly the word that we gave. Imagine if Bhagawan were like that. Bhagawan has given us promise that he will, take care of our welfare throughout our lives. Maybe Bhagawan said, no, today I don't feel like it. I need to rest. You are on your own for today. Right? Just imagine the complete chaos in our lives. Right? So we expect Bhagawan to be on guard with his word all the time, but we aren't. We'll do anything we like. Bhagavan has to be at our disposal, available to us all the time. Right? And Bhagavan says you need to have that kind of ekagrata. Now, many people, I have been a student from 2000, and I used to watch closely, because even I was very eager that I should receive some kind of teaching, some kind of spiritual input from Swami, right? And after Swami's passing in 2011, when I would go out, people would come to know, oh, you're from Prashantilalam, or you have been with Swami for so many years, right? So they would ask, so what is that spiritual practice he has taught you? Because very common, no? If you're near a guru, you will receive some spiritual instruction. And I would scratch my head, no, he has not taught me anything in particular. He would only ask me my name when I would get married, things like that, So now I began wondering, where was the spiritual instruction? And then it hit me that it was in front of me my entire life. I didn't realize it. See, many of you must have seen videos of Bhagawan seated in the Kulwant Hall. So you would notice that there would be sometimes these attendants, like young students, would be sitting right next to Bhagawan, looking, serving him, either looking to give water, or if he needed a handkerchief to give that, somebody gives a letter to pass it on to Swami, and things like this, right? Then it struck me that what he was training all of us was right there, that our attention should be where? Completely on the Lord. Imagine you in the position of those students serving Bhagavan, right? You have to be very, very alert, because Swami will not turn and ask you for water. There will be a certain movement of his head, a way his hand moves, and you have to be very alert that that's what he needs. Because Swami will never ask anything for himself. You have to observe and see what Swami wants. So the way he turns his head, you have to understand, oh, he needs water, or he needs a fan to be adjusted, or he needs a letter to be handed over to him, right? And so their attention has to be so completely absorbed in the Lord at all moments. Even for 1 second, their attention can't divert. They can't start thinking about, the homework, assignment, or anything else, like their parents have told them something. No, their thoughts are on Swami that entire time when he is there, right? So this kind of absorption in the Lord, that is in fact the gift that Swami has given each one of us. That is in fact the ekagrata, that one-pointedness. So it didn't need any particular spiritual instruction. What it needed was to emulate that kind of one-pointedness, where you're able to shut down all other thoughts and keep your attention completely on Swami. He was demonstrating it right in front of us through those particular lucky students who were able to serve him. Right? So it is this kind of ekagrata that Bhagavan is looking for in each one of us. And Bhagavan then speaks about the next goal of our lives, and that is to recognize the real you. And this is a very interesting topic, because when we ask, who are you? There are a number of beautiful answers that we can get. And there was, in fact, a few years back, there was this story of a company called Cambridge Analytica, based in England. And they had a software, an algorithm that could trawl through Facebook profiles, right? It would look for a few. It just needed some hints about what are the things you have liked, what have you said dislike to, and pretty soon it would construct a very, very accurate picture of who you are. Your political preferences, what it could predict after that, what kind of purchases you would make, everything threadbare. Your personality was open to that software completely, right? See, how does this identity grow, right? You start your life as what? A small little child. The French, they call it as a tabula rasa. You don't have anything. You're a completely empty receptacle. And then things happen, right? So one by one, it is like this photo of this guy, he's got so many spectacles. So they first tell you that this is your religion, you're a Hindu, you're a Muslim, right? And that's the first spectacle you put on. And you begin to look out life through that spectacle called, okay, I am a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian. And then as you grow, you begin to notice, okay, so I have this much money, my friend has that much money, my neighbors have this much money. So the second spectacle, you begin to put on the spectacle called wealth. Now you have two spectacles. What is your religion? And next, what is your social or economic status? And then you go to school and the kind of marks we get and the kind of remarks our teacher gives for those marks. The third spectacle, right? I am this good or I am this bad. I am no good. Another spectacle that we put on. Right? So like this, one by one, we start putting on these spectacles and we look out at life and we imagine I am seeing reality. In fact, 6 billion people on this planet, each one of them with their own set of spectacles, and each one of them thinking that they have a vision of what reality is. None of us know. It's just an interpretation. Just an interpretation. Even right now, if at the end I have spoken something, and if I ask any of the candidates to summarize what I said, and maybe there are 150 participants, believe me, you will hear 150 different versions of what I spoke. Each one of us, our own interpretation, because we have got our own set of filters, and those are the specs that we wear. This is the way we look at ourselves, and this is the way we look at others also. We have our likes, dislikes, our preferences. All of this constitutes an identity which is not really us. This is not how we started out. I like this, very beautiful quotation. It is by a writer called Kurt. So actually, he would write mostly something like akin to science fiction or fantasy, but he would throw in like many philosophical themes like existentialism and regarding whether our life is determined or not. So questions of that sort. And this is very beautiful quote that he begins in a book, and I'd like to read it out. He says like this: to the as yet unborn, to all innocent wisps of undifferentiated nothingness. That's something like how we all start, isn't it? As our own Upanishad says, that we begin as that, as undifferentiated nothingness, that consciousness, that's all we are. And he says, goes on to say, watch out for life. I have caught life, I have come down with life. He speaks about life as if it is a common cold, I have come down with life. I was a wisp of undifferentiated nothingness. A little peephole opened quite suddenly, as if he's now born and he's entered into the world, right? Light and sound poured in. Voices began to describe me and my surroundings, and nothing they said could be appealed. So this is what happens with us, right? We come out, as we grow, we begin to listen to what others are telling us about us, that who we are, what kind of religion, what is the socioeconomic status, what are we good at, what are we bad at, and nothing they said could be appealed. They said I was a boy named Rudolph Waltz, and that was that. They said the year was 1932, and that was that. They said I was in Midland City, Ohio, and that was that. They never shut up. Year after year, they pile detail upon detail. They do it still. You know what they say now? They say the year is 1982 and that I am 50 years old. Blah, blah, blah. So this is pretty much what happens to each one of us. That we begin to completely believe in that identity that we have constructed for ourselves. We begin to believe that that is real. But Swami says that no, there is something that you are not awake to. You need to awaken to who you truly are. And that is that undifferentiated nothingness that this author was speaking about. And this is one of the goals of meditation, that Swami says to create that inward vision within ourselves, to not get caught up in what society is telling you or what even your mind is telling you about who you are, but to listen to what the great masters have said. In fact, one of the masters I very greatly admire, Nisargadatta Maharaj. So he has written this book called I Am That, which is a very, very beautiful book. And I could, in fact, I sometimes would feel that I'm able to kind of understand what Bhagwan's teachings were by reading that book, right? So, you know how he went on to become such a great master? You'll not believe his story that he was never a person who was, very religious or spiritual, but he had a friend who was quite a lot into Advaita. So that friend said, I want you to meet my master. So they go to the master, but unfortunately, they go to the ashram at a time when the master is just coming out of the ashram. He's leaving somewhere else. But at that moment, as he comes out, he just turns to Nisargadatta Maharaj and he tells him that you need to believe only one thing, that you are the supreme consciousness itself. That's all he says, and then he goes off. And you can imagine the kind of tumult that must be in Nisargadatta's mind. But I do not know this person, and he suddenly turns and tells me some such thing. He goes back home and he begins to mull over the fact that somebody unknown to him, a guru like this, has said something like this. And he was a trader, he was a businessman. So all the time his mind would be on what is the other person's motivation. There must be something in it, that he must have some goal, some selfish reason. He thinks from all different angles. He sees that guru had absolutely no selfish reason to say something like this. In fact, the guru went on to leave his body 2 weeks later. Then he realized that the guru therefore had, his best interest in mind, and that's why I told him that he was the nothing else but the supreme consciousness. He says, I held on to that word. I held on to that word for 7 years, and then, I became an enlightened person. So that's all was needed. Just we have to shut out all the different voices that we hear, the noise in our lives, and we have to hold on to what Bhagawan says. What does Bhagawan tell us? He says that you are nothing else but the divine Atma itself, that undifferentiated nothingness. So going on to the next chapter, where Swami speaks about the welfare of all beings, that we should be interested in the welfare of all beings, right? Now, the interesting thing is that what does this have to do with meditation? See, meditation is, you can think of it as a task that you undertake by yourself. It's not a group activity like bhajans or seva, right? But why is Swami speaking suddenly about the welfare of all beings? What is more, he begins in fact by speaking about something called the tenfold sins. So he classifies them as, physical, verbal, and mental. And Swami says that these, you can see them here, what those 10 sins are. And he says these are all barriers to meditation. That Swami very specifically in the very first paragraph itself, he says that you should keep away from these things. Right? Like say false alarms in the sense that you spread rumors about others, or mental, like you have greed, you have envy, right? What is the reason for that? Okay. It is very simple. See, for us, what happens is we imagine that dhyana is something that happens in the altar, where you sit for, your half an hour or 1 hour, how much ever time that you have set out for yourself. We think that dhyana happens then. But Swami says, no, it is not that. There is a preparation that has to happen before that. That is, you should be able to keep away from all this. Say something like gossip. It is something we enjoy a lot, right? Swami says that paradoshana, we should not speak ill about others, especially behind their back. But imagine how much fun we get out of that when we speak. This is what he did. He or she did like this, spoke like this. You're putting somebody else down. We get a lot of joy from that gossip. Okay, but imagine that you do this, you feel that happiness for a while, but inside you, the person that you truly are, you yourself know who that is, right? You understand that you suddenly shrunk yourself. You have become a very, very small person, unlike the real person that you are. The heritage, the inheritance that you have from being divinity itself You have somehow shrunk it to something very, very small, and you know that. And then you go sit for meditation. Imagine what happens. That starts nagging you. There's a small little voice that says that, maybe you shouldn't have done that. And that, Swami says, is the reason why, this kind of preparation, you should be on the alert all the time. So preparing the mind for dhyana happens all the time. It's not just sitting in the altar. So because sadhana is an equation, it is the formal practice that you do plus the preparation that goes on behind. And without that preparation, all you're doing is a mere ritual. There used to be this one devotee called Ajit Popat, and he used to share about, he was a jeweler, he was a businessman, and so he would go to Swami in the interview room and he would talk about his meditation. Swami would make fun of him. He said, what meditation? You sit in an altar, I know what happens. You talk about London, Dubai. That's what goes on in your mind. Because that's what his business trips would need him to travel between London and Dubai all the time. So he says, so Swami would say, that is what is going on in your mind. London, Dubai. So, and you call that as meditation, right? So what is this secret that Swami is speaking about when he says that you should engage, or your thought should be on the welfare for all? Because again, when you say that I've got to realize myself, I have to become enlightened. Again, who is to become enlightened? You think that it is you that has to become enlightened. But Swami says that this is not going to happen. Your spiritual progress is not going to happen until and unless you start thinking about the welfare of all other beings. What is the secret? What is Swami speaking about here? Right? So coming back to our meditation and all that, many of us, why do we engage in spiritual pursuits? Because we feel that we are not enough, in the sense that, maybe, as I said, some of us have some qualities in ourselves which we dislike. We feel that we have to go beyond these qualities. It could be something very simple like, okay, I'm a lazy person, as I said, or I'm given to anger, I'm given to jealousy. And my elders have said that by the practice of meditation, that I will be able to go beyond these, right? So, or something like, I'm not motivated enough. And many of you, what you do is, if you're angry, you're stressed, if you think that is a problem in your life, what do? You turn to books or you turn to advice, right? So those who want motivation in their lives, they'll go and pick up hundreds of books. You'll find their bookshelf is full of books on how to get motivated. And they've read all those hundreds of books and still not found the secret. Or you've gone through classes of anger management, stress management, and you're coming out even more angry and even more stressed. It's not worked at all. Right? Why? Because you can imagine that this is that red line called you. And that that these are all the problems or the shortcomings, whatever obstacles in your spiritual life, they're all here. This is that red line, which are those obstacles, right? And your entire life, you spent maybe now 2 or 3 decades with yourself, and you're working on these. You're saying that somehow I want to make that red line small. If possible, erase it altogether. Only problem is there is no eraser with you. So if I give this to you as a puzzle, that there is this red line has to be made smaller, but I am not giving you any eraser to do it. How will you achieve it? Anybody has an idea how we can achieve this?
Draw a big line after that.
Sorry?
We should draw a long line. There's only short.
Brilliant. Absolutely. So you don't work on that line, right? What you work on is instead you draw a bigger line. And what is this bigger line? So Swami says that you start looking at people around you, what kind of problems that they are having. And he has shown this in his own life, that Swami built a big, huge super specialty problem. He took a hospital. He took on a problem that was much, much bigger than all of us. He said that there are people out there not able to afford healthcare. He says, I will take on that problem. Or I will take on the problem of people not having access to good education. I'll give it free of charge. Many of you know about Gandhiji. See, he was able to fight for our freedom and he took on the British, and he led a movement which was very unique in the entire world, that of non-violence. You know that he was a lawyer. He was trained as a lawyer. Can you imagine that a person like that, who inspired so many with his speeches and oratory, but when he started out as a lawyer, in his very first case before a judge, he could not even open his mouth. He described that his knees started shaking, sweat started pouring down his face. He could not even argue for his own life. Right? And imagine a person with such low self-esteem, such less self-confidence in himself. How did he go on to lead a country to its freedom? Right? How did he get that confidence? Exactly by that, by picking on a problem so big, saying that I will lead my country to freedom. The moment he took on such an enormous task, that is the moment when suddenly whatever he needed, or confidence he needed, oratorial skills that he needed, from inside they started coming out. And his problem of low confidence was solved without even him thinking about it. This is what Swami says, that you are completely worried about the problems that your small little self is having, right? Why don't you take on something so big? And this is what he does. Why was the Seva organization created? Why not just make it one spiritual organization? Everybody sits for meditation. Gopi Bhai knows that in the Hyderabad youth, how many times the youth would ask Swami, about our sadhana, spiritual practice. Swami would say, at your age, please do seva. That is all the sadhana that you need. That is a preparation for the mind to calm down, right? Because this is what we are obsessed with, is a small red line, right? But Swami is saying, create bigger and bigger and bigger red lines. The moment you do that, some transformation will take place in you that will leave you so unrecognized. I remember in the Hyderabad youth, at that time, there was one friend of mine. He was with me in my 11th and 12th. I know the kind of person that he was. I joined the Hyderabad youth. In my second trip with the Hyderabad youth, he's sitting in the bus next to me. And I was like, oh my God, not this guy here. How come Swami is calling this guy? He was that kind of person, very obnoxious, irritating, annoying. We all have people like that in our lives, right? And a few years down the line, like I saw this person completely changed. He had immersed himself so much in that activity, in the seva activity, I could not recognize this person. Suddenly he was full of confidence, exhibiting leadership qualities, and he had become so close to Swami as a result, right? So what was that transformation? Did he take any courses, any special intervention or psychiatrist that he go to? Nothing. He just did his seva, whatever task was given to him. That brought about such a beautiful change in that person. Literally, for the first time, I saw a caterpillar become a butterfly in front of my eyes, just through the path of seva. And because this is a very beautiful paradox of happiness, right? Because that is the goal of most of us when we get into meditation. Our idea is what? That we are so troubled, we are so stressed. We are looking for some break from that, which we call as happiness, right? So the paradox of happiness has two laws in it. Right? The first law, they say, is that the pursuit of happiness is almost a guarantee that you will not achieve it. I'll repeat that. The pursuit of happiness is almost a guarantee that you will not achieve it. Why is this? Because, for when you think about it, when you are pursuing something, right? Why would you pursue happiness? Because you're telling yourself that I'm not happy. I don't have happiness. So as long as you're pursuing happiness, this is what you're repeating to yourself. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. Then how would you expect that happiness will come to you? That's why they're saying the pursuit of happiness is almost a guarantee that you will not achieve it. Then what is the way? Is there a way out? A better way, consider, this is not the truth, this is not a law, right? But consider that a better way may be to try to stretch your motivations past your emotions. Can you get that? To try to stretch your motivations past your emotions. See, many of you can see, you lived now 3 decades almost. So you can yourself see that how much of your life is dedicated to making your mind happy. Somebody said something, I have to get back. That's when I'll be happy. Or I'll get that promotion, or I'll get that increment in my salary. That's when I'll be happy, right? I'll find the right kind of husband or right kind of wife. That's when I'll feel happy. So we feel that somehow catering to our mind and its emotions is how we will become happy. That's the pursuit of happiness. But it says that we need to stretch our motivations past our emotions and to accept that life is not about making yourself feel better, but about creating the conditions under which many others can feel better about themselves. It's not about making yourself feel better, but creating the conditions under which many others can feel better about themselves. And believe me, this is something that I have myself experienced in my life, right? I was just speaking about this yesterday too, that I was last year in August, I was in Kashmir, right? It was a dream of many years that I wanted to go once and see that most beautiful place on earth. So I was in Kashmir in a place called Aru Valley, beautiful beyond description. I could see, although it was August, I could see like snow or glaciers on top of the mountains from that small, beautiful village. The meadows were beyond description, so beautiful. You would see fantastic horses, people riding on it. I can't describe that beauty. But even as I was there, I had achieved what was like a dream of mine, right? I suddenly, it struck me that this is not the happiest that I have felt in my life. I recall that the happiest that I felt in my life when I was back in Parthi, with people and where I was making a difference to their lives. Because in the months before that, there were a few people whom I was helping to, kind of coaching them to get into our educational institutions, right? That happiness that I got when they were able to succeed and got admission into our Brindavan institution, Anantapur College, etc. That making a difference, believe me, it made me far, far happier than achieving this dream of mine. That although I was there, right in Kashmir, I realized this is not the happiest time of my life. The happiest time of my life was, in fact, just months before that. I realized the truth that, the life may be about not about making yourself feel better, but creating the conditions under which many others can feel better about themselves. And you have that opportunity as members of the Seva organization, right? And that, in fact, as you do it more and more, you'll realize that the true happiness is when you get used up in making a difference to others. And therefore, life, as Swami says, life is always throwing at us this choice. There are two kinds of lives that we can live. One is a life that is given by your identity. You know which identity? That identity that we saw, that guy with all the spectacles that you have all put on, right? That small little self that you have created for yourself, that is the identity. So how does the life of somebody who lives by their identity, what does it look like? Petty desires, the next increment, the next promotion, then we don't get it, then we are unhappy. We get it, we are happy for 2 days, and then we are unhappy after that. So a life given by identity looks like this: petty desires, right? Avenging past insults. I know of people who, no, we don't want to speak to our dad, we don't want to speak to our mom, our brother, sister. No, they said something, they insulted me, humiliated me, cut off, over. 20 years, 30 years, they don't speak. Because somehow that makes them feel good about themselves. And some of these are very, very imagined, something they imagine. Like they said something, they interpreted it, and they've been a prisoner of that interpretation for decades. Not only they were miserable, they made the other person also miserable, right? The narrow-minded ways of thinking that we have, not at all broad-minded. We don't include others' welfare in our lives, and therefore we lead a selfish life. And we do all this, and then we think, hey, why am I not happy? and trying my very best to be happy. I'm staying out till 2 a.m. I'm doing my partying, being with friends, chatting, but nothing is working. I'm still unhappy. I'm waking up unhappy. Why? Because you're still living a life of what? Given by identity. And Swami offers us another choice. He says there is a way of living in which you live a life of empowering people around you. You can live a life of integrity. You don't need to cut corners. No need to break laws. You can live a life of love and service. This is a life of possibility. It's something very big. You can live a life of leadership. In fact, this is what, if somebody asks me, what is your sadhana? I can tell you that precisely this is what is my sadhana. But I'm looking at where am I giving in to the temptation of being my small self. You know, where I'm a person who would actually, with my words, I'd love to put people down. You know? I get a joy in that. Try to show that I'm intellectually superior and all those things, right? But I know that that is not making me happy. What is making me happy is instead being an empowering person. Being a person whose life is given by what? Love and service. So that is always a choice that I'm having to make. Easy choice is to live a life of given by identity, right? But somehow I have to bridge that gap going from this small oval on the left, the life of identity, bridging to the life given by possibility. And Bhagawan says that is where viveka or discrimination comes in. It's not something very abstract. I have to talk to myself that, Hari, you're giving into something like this. Is it consistent? What is the discrimination needed? Is it consistent with who I have given myself to be as Swami's student, as Swami's devotee? Is it consistent with that? We need to stop for a moment and see, is it consistent with that? And then immediately your mind will give you the right action, what has to be taken. So that is what is discrimination. We need to be able to intellectually exercise ourselves. There's a book that I would recommend called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by David Kahneman. It speaks about this. He speaks about the brain as being like system 1 and system 2. So many of us are geared for very quick action. The moment something happens, reaction, stimulus, reaction. We are like cockroaches in that respect. No different from that. So discrimination is what separates me from that cockroach. We need to think slow. At that moment, slow down and look at, is it consistent? Right? And Bhagawan actually in that same section, he speaks about something which I feel is very, very important, since all of you are aspiring to be leaders. Right? What are the hallmarks of great leaders? He says, and you should go through that section again. He speaks about how, we imagine that leaders are what? The boisterous type, right? The people who speak loudly and you see them running this way, that way. We get carried away by looking at arrogant leaders. That's our mind, right? Our brain is actually geared that way, wired that way, right? But there is this person called Jim Collins. He wrote this book called Good to Great, right? He analyzed companies. So he's looking at in the corporate sphere, right? He was looking at people who have become great leaders in the sense that they led their organizations to greatness, enduring greatness. Meaning, even when these people stopped being the leaders in that organization continued to thrive. So what kind of leaders did they identify? What kind of characters, right? Before I go to the first one, you will not believe, but he says these were people with humility. These are not the people you would see giving like press conferences, out there writing books about their greatness. None of that. They had humility and combined with what? Indomitable will. That is, once the task was given, a certain goal was given, they would not give up till that goal was achieved. Right? How are they able to do that? They noticed that these people had an ego, just like you and I have egos, but they channeled their ego needs away from themselves. So they were not being the life of identity. So what did they do? They switched their channel, their goals away from themselves into the larger goal of the institution. So they invented for themselves a life of what? Possibility, much larger than who they were. So from that small little red line, they drew a very big line. So they channeled their egos away from themselves into the larger goal of the institution. And they noticed that, when good results happen, they would credit others. They would either say that this is because of my beautiful team of subordinates, etc., or even good luck. But never they would say that, because I did this, because I was there. But when things fell apart, they would look in the mirror for taking responsibility for whatever didn't work. So this they noticed, right, out of their analysis of good leaders, that these are the kind of characteristics which are common to all of them without exception. So this is a beautiful message that Swami gives us towards the end of the chapter, and especially relevant to those of you who are in this course, that you're trying to get at what leadership is. And he's telling you exactly how leaders behave. So with this, this is my summary, right? What I interpreted from what I read of the Dhyana Vahini, and that is because of the role that I have been given. I'm pretty sure that any of you could have done a different job, not the same job as I did, but you would look at it in your own way. You would have your own insights. Unfortunately, for lack of time, we'll not be able to listen to you, and so you have to listen to me, right? So I would first of all thank Bhagawan for this wonderful opportunity to be amongst you all. This is my third time that I'm able to be part of this group, and I've been assured by Gopbhai that I'll have the good fortune of meeting you all pretty soon in person when you come to Prashanti Nilayam. I'd like to dedicate this effort at Bhagwan's lotus feet, and I hope and pray that I've been of service to each one of you. I think that we have time to take a few questions also. I'd be very glad if some of you could share your thoughts, your insights from what you read and what we spoke about today.
Sairam, brother.
Sairam.
Thank you for this wonderful session, brother. With your permission, can I open this for Q&A now for the participants?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Thank you, brother. Sairam, dear participants, all of you who are having queries or who wish to get it solved right now, I would like to request you all to please use the raise hand option and then turn on your microphone and camera when your name is called. Alternatively, you can also use the chat box to post your queries and get them answered. So I will go with the raised hands now. Sister Priyadarshini from UK, can you please unmute yourself, turn on your camera and ask your question, please?
Sairam, brother, at the outset, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation with all the images. I think it'll stay in our minds the way you've explained it with lines and the dog's tail and everything. My one question very quickly I'll ask is about the 10 bad qualities that Swami had talked about, right? The physical, mental, and so could you please throw some light on it? Because the first time I read it, I thought I had only 2, 3. And then the more I read it, I keep thinking, I feel I have all of those bad qualities, right? So could you throw some light on how this manifests in people, these bad qualities that Swami is talking about?
So you're right. And those 10 qualities are present not only in you, ma'am, they're present in all of us. So like you are not unique in that sense. It's the bad news. So, many in Western philosophy, there's this philosopher called Heidegger. So he says that when we are born into human life, we are born into a condition that existed even before we became humans. So all those 10 sins that Swami speaks about, they are unique to what? They are unique to the human condition, which is a condition that existed before you came onto this planet, and which will be there even after you are there, after you go, right? So how they manifest is essentially they are sometimes needed for the survival of that identity. So if you choose to be an animal, if you choose to live an animal existence, like because we are animals essentially, right? So in that case, those having those 10 qualities is perfectly fine. Like sometimes, to live in the world, in order to succeed in the world, people say, it is not what I hold as true, but they'll tell you, you got to be pragmatic. So these things, let these qualities be. You're jealous of others, good, na? It will propel you to go forward. Right? Only thing is they don't recognize that there is poison in that. It's like a very temporary motivational, imagine jealousy, right? So some people will say, channel your jealousy so that you can get better than that person. I remember one book called, what is it called? Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So there the author is talking about his experiences with his son. They go climb a mountain. So both of them are climbing the mountain. And the way these two climb the mountain is very different. So the author says that his son, while climbing the mountain, he wanted to prove something to his dad and to himself and to his friends that, that I can do anything. I am capable of handling this. So he says that at first he began running up the mountain, and then he, he became so exhausted that he had to sit down and wait for his father to catch up. And by the time he got to the top of the mountain, the peak, he was so irritated, he could not even enjoy the beautiful landscape that was there around him. So, whereas the father says that he had nothing to prove, he had nothing going on. All that was going on was climbing the mountain. So he says because of that, he could enjoy, the small little flowers that were there on the way, the butterflies that came in their path. And when he got to the top, he was speechless with the beauty of nature that was there in front of him. So that is when there is nothing going on. You see, why do we have those 10 sins? Like, you can take up any one of them. It's like something has got triggered inside and we're trying to quell that. We're trying to kind of placate that, right? That is what is going on with us. But if you leave that alone, when nothing is going on, that is when you can see the beauty of life. You can actually be in life. And that's what Bhagawan is saying, that you're missing out on life by chasing these small things.
Thank you so much for that explanation, brother. Thank you, Sai.
Sister Sai Shruti, can you please unmute yourself, turn on your camera and ask your question, please?
Okay, Sairam sir. I actually have a couple of questions. So the first one being in this third chapter, I have seen there are two things that Swami speaks about. You also explained it really well. So there is this concentration, that is avadhana, and one-pointedness, ekagrata, that you have spoken about. So how these both are different, or how should we gel it together, or how should it be done? So this is my first question.
Yeah, as I mentioned, concentration, ekagrata are the same thing, that of you getting absorbed into whatever task is in front of you, including meditation. It could be several other things, but you kind of getting absorbed in that, absorbed in the sense that you're not even aware of your own identity. You as a person dissolves into that task. So what is the difference between concentration and ekagrata is where you do it willfully. Okay. That you have trained your mind to make it happen. Sometimes concentration is something, as Swami distinguishes, is that it happens by itself. You are not in control of that. So he says ekagrata means that has to happen consistently, time and time again. So it is something that you do intentionally and willfully.
Okay. So that means we need to train our mind in a way that it becomes automatic.
Yes. So in the sense, actually our minds are not trained for that. So what happens is the moment you start with, say even now as I'm talking to you, there are a number of thoughts that are coming to my mind. Next to me there is tea and I want to take a sip of that, right? So I have to, the moment that thought comes, I have to say thank you for sharing, right? But I am doing something else. I am talking to my Sai sister right now. So it is that way. So there is actually, it's not going to happen like, suddenly you find it so self-absorbed. If you were there, you would not be part of this seminar at all. No, you would be high up in the Himalayas. So the thing is that we have to keep pushing ourselves, or rather pulling ourselves back to the task on hand. We got to keep reminding ourselves. As I said, no, that is where discrimination, very big word. No? For Swami, that's a very, very big word. Viveka or discrimination is very big. That means you have to be present at all times. You can't let go. You can't suddenly drop your guard and say, okay, it's going to happen. I was saying, this is going to happen everywhere, not just in meditation. That's what I was saying. You watch your word. Like, where have you given your word? Notice the number of excuses you will give to yourself for not fulfilling that word.
Right.
Maybe if you're studying, you will know that if you have an assignment to turn in, right, how creative you will get with your excuses. If you would put all of them down, you would win the Nobel Prize Award for literature.
Yes, yes.
So that is where you have to keep reminding yourself, am I being consistent? Am I being consistent? Am I being consistent with either the word that I have given, or if that's not powerful enough for you, for the expectation Swami has from me. But it's a conversation. You have to keep talking to yourself and keep yourself there. If you look at great champions, right? Badminton players, TT players, or cricket players, you notice that on the court, they're constantly talking to themselves. Because their mind is sharing a lot of things. Like it is sharing past failures, when the match is not going well, their mind is telling him, "Taise nahi hoga re, you're gone." Right? So they're talking to themselves to, they say, "Thank you for sharing, but I have trained. I've got this task in front of me." They bring themselves back to what they have to do. So that is, in practice, that is what is ekagrata. So don't get a very rosy picture that suddenly your eyes will close, all other thoughts will abate. That's not what will happen. When that happens, great. Absolutely enjoy that time. But most of the time, it will be this. You bringing yourself back to the task at hand. And my advice as an elder is watch out not only in the altar, but everywhere in your life.
Right. My actual second query was the same. In being in the samsara, how would we be able to get that ekagrata and concentration in place? Maybe you answered most of it.
Okay, got that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sairam.
Sister Vibhuti Gupta, can you please turn on your microphone and camera and continue with your question, please?
Sairam, I want to ask, like in the constant Sairam, in the constant competition with life, like we have a lot of things to do, like taking care of our parents, our kids, our in-laws, our job, and there are various promises that we have done to our everyone around, even to our job, to our husband, to our kids, to our family. Like we will do this for you. We have promises with ourselves that we have to do this for ourselves. So, and our mind tells us that you are not enough, you are not enough, you are like, you can't do all this, and you get a thing into yourself that like you don't have enough. So how to overcome that feeling that you want to do everything for, but you are, you know that you can't do it all, but you want to do.
Yeah, so that feeling is always going to be part of you, ma'am. You're never going to overcome it. Like I'm giving you the bad news that it's fixed till the day you enter into the grave. Your mind is always going to tell you you're not enough. So be comfortable with that, no?
Okay.
This see, what is happening is you are living a life that is given by what? Your feelings, not your word. See, Bhagawan were like that. See, look at Bhagawan's life. So for almost 6 decades, he did the same thing. Day after day, he would come out for darshan, walk between the devotees, collect their letters, give interviews to them. Day after day, sit, listen to the same bhajans. And even if he went from Puttaparthi to Brindavan, he'll see the same faces again over there. And he would say, okay, let me go to Kodaikanal. There also the same faces. And day after day, no break. There's no such thing as, no, today I'll take a holiday. What if he felt like that? What if he, at one point of time, I'm looking at Swami as a human, because I can't, if I relate to him as God, there's nothing I'm going to learn from him. I'm going to say, because he's God, he's able to do those things. I'm saying, look at how he lived his life. He lived his life by what? By the word that he gave to his devotees. There's a book, I'm not able to immediately recall the name of the devotee, very senior devotee. He wrote about how once Swami came from Brindavan to Puttaparthi, hot sun, he has driven him. And it was 3 p.m. when Swami reached back to Prashanti Nilayam. And they are all persuading Swami, Swami, why don't you lie down and take rest? And Swami says, no. I have come, my devotees are sitting out there, they are waiting for me. And this is how I'll get energized, by being among those devotees, not by sitting down and resting. So he lived a life given by his word that he was there for his devotees' sake. He had come for the welfare of humanity. So he didn't live a life given by feelings. Most of us are living a life given by our feelings. And you're giving significance to a feeling called I'm not enough. That's just one of the things your mind is sharing. It will share. Throughout your life, it will share. I'm telling you, there's no book, no meditation, nothing that will take that thought out of your mind. It's always going to tell you. Like, I have a person I know. He says, I am lazy and I work 18 hours a day. Do you understand that? I am lazy and I work 18 hours a day. Because his mind is constantly telling him, tu jaake movie dekh, tu so ja, tu kha le, eat this, do that. But he's not living his life like a cockroach, no, given by that feeling. He's living his life by the word that he has given to himself. That's why Swami says you should look at the very first this one, what play that Swami has written, Cheppinattu Chestara. Very, very important. So there's no overcoming it. That's what I mean. I'm answering this in detail because I'm sure many other participants have the same question. That inferiority complex, that imposter complex, all of these, they are there with you throughout your life till you enter the grave. Whoever tells you otherwise is misguiding you. But it's just one of the voices in your head. It is just one thing that your mind shares. There are many other things that your mind shares. Why don't you listen to that? Why give significance to only one thing? I'm not enough.
I hope
I answered that.
I think that answers your question, Sister Vibhuti.
Sorry?
Sister Vibhuti, I think your question is answered.
Yes.
Thank you, brother. Next, we have Sister Sai Shravani. Can you please go ahead, turn on your microphone and camera?
Sairam, brother.
Sairam.
So, first of all, thank you for explaining the topic in much detail. And sir, I have a question relating to which I face. Now, when I try to meditate then what happens is different up to 30 to 40 seconds or maximum 1 minute. I can control, or I try to meditate in what way I think. But so after a certain point of time, what happens is as you have already mentioned, different thoughts come into my mind. Like not necessarily the negative thoughts, but something I get diverted from, or I get different distractions. So am I required to wait for my thoughts to be vanished, or do I need to do something? As of now, what? Yes.
No, that's what. Like, don't you let the the moment you ask this question and I give an answer, it's all going to get messed up now. Because your question is how to deal with it, right? Yeah. So
what am I required to do?
There's only one thing that you need to do. The same answer which I gave to Sister Vibhuti a few minutes back. You got to completely accept please read, if you read the opening part of it, Swami tells very beautifully, accept that this is how it is. There's nothing wrong with it. That is a design. If your brain weren't working that way, believe me, you would be a vegetable. You would have an accident or God knows what would happen to you if your brain weren't constantly looking around for things. It's doing what it is designed to do. Nothing wrong with it.
Oh, how can I if I live that for, I don't take any step or I'll just relax?
Try that.
Whatever.
Try that. All these years you have tried doing something about it. Try not doing anything about it and then come back.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
The first problem is that only, that we worry and then we get worried that we are worried.
Okay.
Like you've written exams, no, many of you. This is my, I also teach sometimes online. So the students ask, or the parents ask, my kid gets very nervous before an exam. I say, very good. That will keep them alert for the exam. There's nothing wrong about being nervous. Like that is human. You know, we had this 2 years back, that opening session of National Leadership Program. There were, I don't know how many participants in front of me. The moment I stood, at that moment, butterflies all started flying in my stomach. So at that moment, did I collapse? Yeah, the butterflies will fly here. Like you're standing in front of so many people, you will get nervous. Nothing wrong with it. Then I turn my attention to, okay, now what do I have to contribute to these people, these young people are in front of me? What do I have to contribute? So the moment I turned my attention to that, I was not conscious of the butterflies. Maybe they were still flying around in my stomach. I don't know. But my attention was not there.
Thank you, brother. Next, we have Sister Anita from Chennai Metro West. Sister, please turn on your microphone and camera and go ahead with your question. Sister Anita?
Yeah, Sairam.
Please ask your question.
Yeah. Sir, I have a doubt, like in the concept of the two lines, we always see people who are suffering more, and we become content and we say, okay, fine, God, we are fine and all those things. But when in our family, they say that you should always see people who are above you to grow big. You should not see the people under you. So if it's our own parents who say that, we feel bad to even say back like we should what we should do. So we get confused and we move towards a bit into the external world and like that, you know. So how to really convince people around us that we are going on the right path, and how should we talk, or should we keep quiet and do what is right? So how do we tackle that?
Yeah, it needs a little bit of both. That's a very good question. What is most convincing perhaps is actually them seeing the transformation. See, what happens is you got to see they're trying to keep you secure. Any parent, you got to see the background from which they are coming from. They got your best interest in mind. I don't see anything wrong with what they said, because that is their duty, to keep their daughter protected. Right? So they are coming from there when they're saying that. So first thing is you need to address that. You know, if they feel that you're not doing well enough in your life, like your career is not advancing, you got to take care of your career. You got to take care of your studies. Swami never said that, you know, I want you to jump into service of society while sacrificing your own life. No, first get your life in order.
Okay.
So if that is their concern, like that your life is not in order, then you got to show them efforts that your life is in order. Till then, they'll think of you as that small little kid in diapers. Because that's whom they're trying to protect. No?
True, sir. Actually, even as we grow big, it becomes more and more always for our parents.
I'm 40 years old. My father, today I sneezed loudly in the room. He came rushing in asking what happened to you, what happened to you. So that's not that's not going to change. They'll always be your guardians throughout your life. So
even
look
even
at
if
that.
we do
So,
well, even if we do well and we go forward, still they have a mindset that, you know, still we should grow big. That never comes down actually. Even
never
as
come, no.
even I have a 6-year-old kid, so even I also will do the same thing. But
Yeah.
that is where we have to be careful and we have to balance. So
It's beautiful. That word is fantastic. What you said, balance. Right? You got to balance it out. Now, how will you do it? I don't know. But you're right, absolutely. You've got to be, that question should be there. How do I balance it? I don't have an answer, nor do you. But remain in that question called, how do I balance it? That's all. Just stay there. That's the important thing.
okay. Thank
The
you,
next,
sir.
the last question for us today will be from Sister Ambika. Sister Ambika, can you please turn on your microphone and camera and go ahead with your question?
Sir, my question is how to gain inward vision.
Little loudly, Sister Ambika, little loudly.
Sir, my question is how to gain the inward vision.
Anybody
Sister,
from the
can you
anybody
please
who
try
heard,
saying again or texting your question, sister?
Sir,
you can put it in the chat.
question is how to gain the inward vision.
He's asking how to gain the inward vision, if I'm not wrong, Sister Ambika. Is that your
Yeah, oh,
question?
right. I got that. How to gain the inward vision, right? Yeah, so one of the things that Swami says in this respect, very important, he says that it is in the depths of silence that the voice of God is heard. I'll repeat, it's in the depths of silence that the voice of God is heard, right? So what this means is, first of all, look at the kind of lives that we are leading, right? Okay, so that means in order to gain the inward vision, at times we have to spend time on ourselves. We have to do it. Like we've got to find a place of solitude, cut out all the other noise, the outside noise to begin with. The next thing that you have to do is now watch the thoughts that are going on in your own mind, right? About yourself. That is the beginning of the inward vision. Watch all the thoughts that you have going on in your mind. Many of them are about yourself. You're talking about yourself, the kind of person that you are. So watch all those opinions, judgments you have that are going on in your mind, right? And as you watch, those things will settle down and you begin to have a real look at who you truly are. That will happen maybe for a few seconds, but that is the starting of that inward vision. The moment you arouse that, the moment that is able to come into view, that will be part of you going forward. Like many times you'll see after that, at what we call as introspection, voice of conscience, all of that is you enabling that inward vision from time to time by cutting out everything else, outside stimulus and even the stimulus from inside. It's a practice. It has to happen again and again and again, and pretty soon it will become part of you. So most important is that, like, how do you get to that silent zone?
Thank you, brother. Thank you for this.
I do just for lack of time, but if you can look at Vipassana meditation, like yesterday I had more time to talk about this, but I would advise for whoever asked this question, just look at Vipassana meditation, that particular technique, what happens in it, right? That will give you an answer to what you're talking about, that inward vision. So there they'll cut out everything. Like your, first of all, the most important thing in your life, which is your mobile phone, that will be taken away from you. Then they'll give you very limited food, which for me is disastrous. Then you will not be allowed to talk to other people. So they first cut out all the other sensory inputs. Then you're by yourself, you're meditating. So as you meditate, you first become aware of your body sensations. Then you become aware of what is happening in your mind. So that is that inward journey. To put it in short.
Thank you, brother. Thank you once again for this insightful session. Sairam sisters, if there are any more queries from your side, our WhatsApp group will be open wherein you can post in all your questions and they will all be compiled and sent to Brother Hari and he will be answering us that back. I hope that's okay with you, brother.
It is fine.
Thank you, brother. I would like to once again thank you for this wonderful session along with a lovely presentation which you given to all of us. And thank you for starting our Sunday the Sai way. However, there is one thing which I think I would like to contradict with you when you said that our faculty, you all are only saying the theoretical aspects. You are sharing your wonderful experiences which you had with Swami and the other experiences which help us learn how to behave and how to think in practical situations. So like they say, it's good to learn from your experience, but it is wise to learn from others' experiences as well. You have shared your wonderful experiences with us. They will definitely help us even in the practical front. Thank you so much, Brother Hari. And undoubtedly, with leaders like Gopi Uncle, with all of us guiding and guarding us, there is so much we learn from them. I would also like to thank Gopi Uncle for organizing this wonderful satsang with you and the participants today. I would like to thank the organizing team for making all of this happen in a smooth manner. And of course, to all the participants who joined in today and participated in this session, I hope you've made the most of this session. With this, we come to an end of today's Dhyana Vahini satsang. We will now end the session with a Shanti Mantra. Side on.
समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ